A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. When a product crosses a border, the government can charge a fee, making that product more expensive for consumers and businesses. This fee is called a tariff, and it's one of the oldest tools in the economic playbook. Tariffs are designed to protect domestic industries from foreign competition by making imported goods costlier or to raise revenue for the government. By increasing the price of imports, tariffs can encourage consumers to buy products made at home, supporting local jobs and businesses. For decades, the global trend was to lower tariffs, promoting free trade and economic cooperation. Countries around the world signed agreements to reduce these taxes, believing that open markets would lead to greater prosperity, innovation, and peace. This consensus aimed to create a global marketplace where goods, services, and ideas could flow freely across borders. The hope was that by connecting economies, nations would become more interdependent, reducing the risk of conflict and driving technological progress. The Trump administration has dramatically reversed this approach, constructing what many are calling a new economic fortress. By building a formidable tariff wall around the U.S., the administration is signaling a shift away from decades of globalization. Since January 2025, a sweeping 10% baseline tariff was imposed on nearly all imports, sending shockwaves through international markets. Investors, businesses, and governments worldwide scrambled to assess the impact, as the cost of doing business with the U.S. suddenly soared. By August, the administration introduced a tiered system, raising tariffs up to 50% on over 70 countries. This move effectively divided the world into economic allies and adversaries, with some nations facing much steeper barriers than others. Even close partners like Canada and the European Union, who have long enjoyed special trade relationships with the U.S., now face steep penalties. Negotiations have become tense as allies try to navigate the new landscape and protect their own economies. U.S. average tariffs have surged to 15%, levels not seen since the 1930s, when protectionism was blamed for deepening the Great Depression. Today the stakes are different, but the risks of economic disruption are just as real. The administration has also introduced a strict 40% penalty for transshipment when goods are rerouted through third countries to dodge tariffs. This signals a new era of enforcement, with customs officers and border agents on high alert for any attempts to circumvent the rules. This is not just a targeted measure against a few countries or industries, it's a fundamental overhaul of America's global economic role. The U.S. is redefining its position in the world economy, prioritizing self-sufficiency and national security over global integration. The world is now confronting a radically different U.S. trade policy, with far-reaching consequences for businesses, consumers, and governments everywhere. As the dust settles, the global community is left to grapple with the new reality of America's economic fortress, and what it means for the future of international trade. For American families, tariffs are no longer just a distant policy. They're a reality that's hitting home, raising prices every time they check out at the store. What once seemed like a debate in Washington is now felt in the aisles of supermarkets and department stores across the country. Import taxes, or tariffs, don't just affect big corporations. They're passed down the supply chain, from manufacturers to distributors, and ultimately land squarely on the shoulders of everyday consumers. Each step along the way adds a little more to the final price tag. Everyday items, shoes, toys, cars, and even basic household goods, are getting more expensive. The impact is visible on store shelves where familiar products now come with unfamiliar price tags. Take Nike, for example. The company expects tariffs to add a staggering $1 billion to its annual costs, warning customers that price hikes are unavoidable. For families, that means paying more for the same pair of sneakers their kids wore last year. The auto industry is hit even harder. A 25% tariff on imported parts could raise the price of U.S.-built cars by thousands of dollars, making it harder for families to afford reliable transportation. Even used car prices are creeping up as demand shifts. Inflation is rising, reaching 2.7% by June 2025. That number may sound small, but it means that nearly everything costs more, from groceries to gas to school supplies. For many, paychecks just aren't keeping up. Toy maker Mattel and even investment giant Berkshire Hathaway have reported revenue declines, directly blaming tariffs for their struggles. It's not just about profits, it's about jobs, wages, and the health of the broader economy. The impact is felt across the board, from birthday gifts to weekly grocery runs. Families are making tough choices, cutting back on non-essentials and sometimes even on basics. For many, this is a direct hit to their wallets, not a distant policy debate. The stress of stretching every dollar is becoming a daily struggle. The cost of protectionism is now a daily reality for millions of Americans. It's not just a headline, it's the new normal at the checkout. Tariffs are fueling inflation and squeezing household budgets tighter than ever. Families are forced to rethink spending, delay purchases, and make sacrifices. The economic pain is widespread and growing, touching every corner of American life. For many, the price at the till is more than just a number. It's a daily reminder of how global policies shape our most personal decisions. The U.S.-Canada Economic Partnership, once seamless and celebrated as a model of cross-border cooperation, is now in crisis. For decades, the two countries have shared not just a border, but a deep economic interdependence that has shaped industries, jobs, and communities on both sides. Today, that relationship is under unprecedented strain. A sweeping 35% tariff on all Canadian imports has upended decades of careful integration. Goods that once flowed freely now face steep costs, and businesses are scrambling to adapt to a new reality that few could have predicted. Canadian steel, long considered vital for U.S. manufacturing and infrastructure, is now far more expensive. American companies that rely on these imports are feeling the pinch, while Canadian producers struggle to stay afloat. The pain is shared, with both economies suffering from the sudden shock. Border delays and a maze of new red tape are disrupting just-in-time supply chains that North American industries have depended on for years. Shipments are delayed, costs are rising, and uncertainty is the new normal for countless businesses. The North American auto industry is especially hard hit. Auto parts often cross the border multiple times before a car is finished, and now, with tariffs accumulating at each step, the cost of building a car has soared. Factories face tough choices, and workers worry about their jobs. Canadian businesses face existential threats. Many are forced to absorb the extra costs, pass them on to consumers, or desperately seek new markets abroad. For small businesses, the stakes are even higher, with closures and layoffs becoming all too common. The policy has strained not just trade, but also the deep political and cultural bonds between the two nations. Decades of trust and cooperation are now overshadowed by suspicion and frustration as leaders on both sides struggle to find common ground. Many Canadians now feel betrayed by their closest neighbor, questioning the future of a partnership that once seemed unbreakable. The sense of uncertainty and loss is palpable as communities grapple with the fallout of a fractured alliance. The US-EU alliance is under strain as new tariffs redefine the relationship. A 15% tariff on EU goods nullifies previous trade deals, hitting everything from cheese to cars. The UK negotiated a 10% rate, but faces strict export caps and high steel tariffs. Switzerland is hit hardest, with a 39% tariff threatening its luxury exports and jobs. European leaders see this as protectionism, undermining the rules-based trading system. Retaliatory tariffs are being considered, but fears of a trade war loom. The new policy has left Europe scrambling, with economic and political fallout spreading. Decades of partnership are now at risk. Asia's economic engine is now caught in a web of unpredictable U.S. tariffs. Japan and South Korea face 15% tariffs, forcing companies to rethink strategies. India, Vietnam, and Taiwan are hit with even higher rates, disrupting supply chains. The policy undermines efforts to diversify away from China, creating new risks. Many Asian firms are absorbing costs to stay competitive, but this can't last. The Bank of Japan warns of falling profits and slower growth. Countries must balance economic pain with maintaining U.S. alliances. The region faces a volatile, uncertain future. Tariffs are unraveling the global supply chains that power the modern economy. Companies optimized production worldwide, but sudden tariffs have thrown this system into chaos. A 50% tariff on copper, for example, sent U.S. futures plunging and triggered global volatility. Strict penalties on transshipment force costly years-long supply chain overhauls. Businesses can't simply switch suppliers, entire processes must be rebuilt. The result is a global slowdown, as investment stalls and consumer spending drops. Central banks may cut rates to counteract the shock, but uncertainty reigns. The world economy is now more fragile than ever. The ripple effects are being felt everywhere. Trade wars create winners and losers, but the reality is messy. Some U.S. manufacturers benefit from tariffs, but many also face higher costs for imported materials. Global supply chains mean few companies are truly insulated from the fallout. Consumers and importers are clear losers, facing higher prices and shrinking choices. American exporters are hit by retaliatory tariffs, losing access to key markets. Countries with lower tariffs may see short-term gains, but instability is rising. The biggest casualty may be the international trading system itself. Decades of progress are being undone, replaced by chaos and uncertainty. The new normal is unpredictability. The America First doctrine drives this tariff policy, prioritizing U.S. interests above all. The administration claims tariffs protect jobs, raise revenue, and give leverage in negotiations. Critics argue tariffs are a tax on Americans and disrupt supply chains. Business leaders and economists warn of higher costs and lost competitiveness. Legal challenges question the president's authority to impose sweeping tariffs. A trade court has ruled against some measures, but appeals are ongoing. The policy has sparked a constitutional debate over executive power. America First is reshaping not just trade, but the balance of power in Washington. The stakes are high for the U.S. and the world. Trump's global tariff shock has set the world on an uncertain path. American families face higher prices and inflation, while allies are turned into adversaries. Global companies are forced to navigate a maze of new taxes and instability. The intended winners often find their gains offset by higher costs. Economists warn the policy could stifle growth and damage America's global standing. The world is left with questions. Will protectionism revive U.S. industry or trigger recession? Can global trade recover? As the experiment unfolds, the world watches and waits.